Axons Unleashed.
G'day ladies and gents, Robbie's my name. Welcome to another cracking episode. Yes, this will be a cracking episode of Axons Unleashed. I got my main man here with me, Lukey Millward, and mate, we've got a really special guest on today.
We do. I did some pre-reading before, as we always try and do to get an understanding of who it is that we're going to go on the journey with today. And I tell you what, this is one story that has already resonated with me pretty bloody strongly.
Yeah, if you are a veteran that's gone through a couple of struggles, if you're a serving member that's thinking about transitioning, because you are going to transition one day, remember it's not if you get out, it's when you get out, and you'll absolutely be a veteran. The stories that Luke and I and the sort of the story arc will go on with our really good friend Aaron here will blow you away. We've only read about Aaron so far. We are literally meeting him for the first time, which I love. Like there can't be any more authentic than the 2 minutes we've just spent off camera. Is going to be you're cracking there. So let me just set the scene. So Aaron, Cornwall, welcome to Axons Unleashed, brother. We're really looking forward to you sharing your story. And like I just said, the guts, quite frankly, and the fortitude that it takes to do what you have done and put on paper and then get to where you are now whilst telling people that things haven't been rosy over the last few years is very admirable. So, mate, there's a lot to be proud of there. So Aaron Cornwall had a pretty good idea of what rock bottom feels like. The former combat engineer and Afghanistan war veteran thought he'd hit his lowest low when, as a young dad juggling university study with work and family commitments, he was forced to sell furniture just to put food on the table. Even years later, he now finds it difficult to talk about. Let me just scroll down for a sec. So let me keep setting the scene. So there's a hard-hitting bloody statement in the first instance. Now the manager of student veteran services and near the completion of a Masters of Clinical Exercise Physiology at ACU, Aaron was also named Veteran Employee of the Year at the Prime Minister's Natural Veterans Employment Awards last year. Aaron Cornwall, welcome to Axons Unleashed, mate.
Welcome, buddy.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah.
It's quite a story. It's quite an intro.
Mate, do you feel, before we jump into your story, do you feel like you've achieved that much? Like it's quite a lot, mate, when you sort of hit that snap up front. Does it feel like it's just, come naturally to you, or it's something you've had to dig into the whole way?
Look, to be honest, it's one of those ones, like, I reflect a lot of the time, and yeah, it was a lot, and it feels like a lot. Defense, that stoic mentality comes back.
Yep.
You always say, it's a lot, but other people have done more. But that's what kind of keeps you going. But I also draw back on that and think ultimately that's what put me in the position I was in. I was having a hard time, and I told myself others were having it harder. So who am I to be complaining about it? But ultimately, that's not how it works.
Isn't that just such a common denominator with defence members? Aaron, before we jump into your story, just a common denominator where it's like, nah, just fucking bite down. Just keep going and it'll be right. We'll get through it. And it is until it isn't.
Yeah, and I even remember, so you got out 2012, I got out 2013, so we've been out similar time frames, as opposed to these guys that just got out like last year.
Fresh out. Still surprised I've got to don't have to shave my face every morning.
Yeah, you don't have to shave anything anymore. But I was going through a real tough time as well. But what you just said then is that one of the things that got through me is like, people are doing it harder than what I am. So it's not that fucking bad, actually. So, yeah. Look, Aaron, there's so much to unpack with your story, mate. Let's do it in a bit of a sequential manner so we can get to personally know more about you and the listeners as well. Where'd you grow up, mate? Where, when, and why did you decide to join the military back in the day?
Yeah, look, so I grew up in Tasmania, Hobart. I grew up in the Eastern Shore, Rosny Park. Normal schooling, primary school. It's going to sound really. I need to follow this train. Primary school, high school. I went to college. The schooling system in Tasmania is a bit different, so.
There's a lot of things in Tasmania that are a bit different, mate.
That's right.
I was wondering when that was going to be said.
Look, the fact that we call it the mainland always, it's pretty funny for a lot of people. But yeah, so, schools there, if you go to public school, you do go to year 10, and then you go to college for 2 other years, and it's a very adult learning environment. Went to college, started to trade, so I did a Cert 1 in fabrication of metal, then went out, started working, looking for a job in that field.
Yep.
didn't really come through in the end. Took on some casual work, and at that point, I had stopped hanging around with some of my friend circles, and I guess that would probably be a big one. Is when I was in college, you know, a lot of my friends had said to me when I was thinking about joining the army that, "Oh, what, you're going to go listen to the man." And you know, being young, it's very easy to be steered away from things, particularly
Of course,
in
yeah.
social groups, not doing those things. So, you know, after spending some time away from my friends, I ultimately decided to join the Defence Force. Again, it was one of those decisions I made with another friend late one night. We were reflecting on our lives, and we said, "Hey, you know what? There's not a lot happening right now. There's nothing really keeping us here. And it would be really good to set us up for the future. The Defence Force seems like a really good idea. It's something that's been in the back of my mind for some time. Starting tomorrow, let's start training. Let's start doing this. Let's start doing that. And let's join the Defence Force." So the next morning I woke up, went onto the internet with my 56K, actually I think it was 256K dial-up.
What year are we talking here, mate, to bring us to that?
That would have been 2007.
Right.
Okay, yep.
That essentially I was going, yep, this is the time to do it. So, yep, jumped on the internet, took a look. What do I need to do? Oh, here's some fitness training plans. And, you know, this is something I don't really go through a lot. But, you know, I was young. I smoked, I drank. I didn't really hold fitness very high on my list of things to do. And so I started a very strict regime of running. I remember doing my first couple of runs, I could only run 200 meters until I was puffed.
Oof. Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Like, I was definitely not the epitome of fitness.
I'm less than that now.
Yeah, that's us now, mate. That's the Axon team now.
Well, with a couple of bung knees and a sore shoulder.
Mate, what was your family dynamic like in terms of your relationship with defence? Like, did you have a strong link with any, you know, sort of historical links with defence or the Defence Force from family members?
Yeah, look, it was a bit of a weird one. No strict ties to defence.
Yep.
That, I guess, when I say strict ties, there were, but it wasn't something that in our family
Motivated
at the
you.
top of the
Yeah.
list. My mum's dad, he had served.
Okay.
He passed when she was very young in an accident. A drink driver had collided with his vehicle. He was going through an intersection. And so not, all of her brothers and siblings were, no one had a really good understanding of who he was and what he did when he was in. So I knew that was there. I had some cousins who were in the Air Force. But outside of that, this was, I was essentially in my mind.
Flying
the
solo.
first person
Yeah.
joining the army, did my training, went in, and essentially I said to myself, I'm a blank slate. Tell me what to do. I guess I was the army's wet dream.
Yeah, the perfect avatar, mate.
Yeah.
What was it like getting your head shaved and going to Kapooka and then, being surrounded by, secos yelling at you and, doing things on a very strict time frame under really, huge amounts of time pressure and stuff?
Look, I was lapping it up, to be honest.
Good on you.
Wow.
Completely lapping it up. Yeah, it was, like I said, I'd spent the 6 months leading up to this just training. This is the be all and end all.
Yep.
This is all I'm going to do, and this is going to tell me what I need to do in my life, and tell me how, I guess, to adult and set me up for the future. And ultimately it did. Going in, I didn't need to be broken down because I went in there and I said, hey, man, just
Here I
tell
am.
me what it is that you need,
Yeah.
and we'll do it.
Aaron, was there a moment, mate, where and whether it's through training, through your recruit training or after, was there a moment where you were kind of like, holy shit, this is for real? Like, not necessarily in an intimidating way, but in a sense of, righto, my hair's starting to grow back a little bit. My shoulders are starting to fill out a little bit. This is real, and I'm now in the ADF.
Honestly, I think that was every day. It was very surreal. I loved the idea. I loved every part of it.
Yep.
I think, like everybody, I reflect back on Kapooka, with the Kapooka Warriors, and it was essentially not a big joke. It was hard.
Yep.
It was tough, but it was, on reflection, very fun.
Yeah.
The way that retraining at the time was horrible. I didn't understand why you would stand in a hallway as a grown adult for an hour
And get yelled at.
dressed, undressed. Why am I going to bed at 1 p.m. in the afternoon for 30 minutes? It just doesn't make sense. But
It's not about that.
Yeah, it's not about that, mate.
yeah.
Aaron, I can't relate to that, buddy. I was a shiny bum staff officer, mate, so I went straight into ADFA. So I have a little bit of exposure to that, but Robbie can certainly relate far more to that on both sides of the fence, right, from Kapooka.
Yeah, having gone through there as a recruit and back as a recruit instructor in 99. I think they had the harshest winter ever in 2007.
Fuck off,
Luke told the story.
2004.
He goes, I did my basic training in 2004. It was the coldest winter Canberra's ever had.
Nearly-
And now you're like, it was bloody hard back
It
then.
probably killed 4 recruits, mate. They just hid the bodies.
So
mate-
you end up going to engineers. How did that come? Did you go in as core allocated, or did you have to choose your core still back then? Because I know that process has changed a little bit.
Yeah, look, I chose my core. I liked I can't say I like the look and feel. I like the sound of combat engineers. I liked building things. I liked doing things with my hands. Combat engineer, look, it's a misleading name. It sounds great now. I tell people I was a combat engineer, like, man, wow, you must be so smart. And I'm not saying that I'm not smart, but I don't think they're thinking of the same type of engineering.
Yeah.
So,
You've got a combat engineer, a mechanical engineer, a aeronautical engineer.
Yeah.
There are different levels of engineering, yes.
Yeah.
You've got a property coach. We engineer stuff for people, and I'm not very smart either.
But, that's the thing. In my mind, it was, combat engineer, fiery, and to be honest, I can't remember what my third option was because I was so dead set on my first, which was combat engineer. I'd memorized, don't ask me now, but I had memorized, what is the role of a combat engineer.
Awesome.
I had my cue cards. I was good to go.
Single focus, mate.
Yep.
Boom.
Yep. And it was awesome. I wouldn't go back as anything else.
So where to take you to first, mate? So you jumped out of Kapooka, you did your march out parade, your parents came up, watched you throw, march off the parade ground, then where to from there?
SME at Holsworthy or Moorebank.
Moorebank, yeah. So went down to Moorebank end of 2008. Went down to Moorebank end of 2008. Essentially, there was one more rotation through, so one more course going through before the end of the year. So we were in holding troop. We weren't on that course, so we needed to wait until the beginning of the following year, so beginning of 2009 for our course to start. So that was a lot of hurry up and wait. That was a massive learning experience and a real test of patience. To essentially have joined the Defence Force, ready to go, finish finish basic training. The grass is greener on the other side. Finally get to the grass and then realise that
You're standing on the bare patch.
I'm essentially I'm in perpetual limbo. And I remember getting there and our SSM saying to us, all right, as SSMs do, hey guys, first up, you're restricted to base because of an incident that happened before you got here. Also, you're on the dry because of an incident that happened before you got here.
Motherfuckers.
Awesome.
Until further notice. But the only thing I can tell you right now is don't get caught. You are not to leave the base. You are not to drink, but don't get caught. Essentially I'm having this existential crisis. What's he saying?
Is he telling me I can?
Yeah, I get it. I'm not going to do anything. But
Don't get caught. Yeah.
sounds like you kind of want me to.
Yeah.
Is this a trap?
There's no one watered this grass for a while. It's fucking burnt. Oh, that's shit house.
Was that the biggest challenge was that one of the most significant challenges that you had when you went through your training and stuff? Like, was it just the fact that you were ready to go and wanted to do what you were being employed to do and you kind of had to wait, or were there some other things that added to that?
Look, to be honest, I found that was frustrating, and at the time, it wasn't a deal breaker. It was just frustrating to be there, to be waiting, to want to get on to the next step in my life, get my posting, start doing, I guess, the army stuff or the stuff that you signed up to do.
Yeah.
But it's almost a rite of passage. I wouldn't have really learned about stabbings, and stabbings, you guys know it, everyone. But, I wouldn't have learned about stabbings. I wouldn't have learned about unicorn courses.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have understood why I don't put my hand up when someone says you want to do a motorcycle course. You only made that mistake once.
Who's got a motorcycle license?
And without holding troop, I probably wouldn't have been introduced to that system, and I say this a lot to students now. We're and I know we'll get to this, but compared to defence, university is not a place to be a grey man. Essentially, defence, looking back at that point in time, defence has a tendency to condition you.
Yeah.
To be the grey man.
Of course.
To not put your hand up, to blend in, to not be an individual.
Uniformity.
Uniformity. And so essentially, from the get-go, being IETs, we were in holding Fubu there for 6 months, essentially, just getting reinforced this idea that who wants to do this?
Yeah. No.
No one's going to put their
No
hand
fucking
up.
way.
You, and you. Who wants to do this? You, and you. All right, guys, motorcycle course. 5 new guys put their hands up. Everyone else does it, and they haven't clicked on to why. These guys must already have their clothes.
Fuck, they must be good on motorbikes.
How long until you went on your first deployment? Because we can talk about fucking IT warriors all day, but that's not why we're here. But it's very insightful, though. I do love it. So, how many deployments did you do?
So, look, I got to Townsville 2009. I know these don't count. These aren't technically deployments. We went to PNG just on one top warrior, so that was pretty cool. A couple of exercises, and then 2011 was selected for MTF3. So going over as a high risk searcher, we did our Certex. We did our pre-deployment training, did our Certex, did the pre-deployment. I can't actually remember what that's called, but we did our pre-deployment test with
certification.
Certification, and then we went over.
I was over there at the same time, mate. I was over there in the SOTG compound.
Oh yes, right.
Yeah, I was the observer then. So 2011. There's a busy period over there. I've seen some photos online there about you doing some crazy stuff there. Tell us about some of the. You give us a couple of worries then, an actual worry, not a IET worry. What was the highest point of your deployment over there, and then probably what were some of the challenges that you needed to endure?
Look, so I guess I was pretty fortunate. I'll say that straight up. I was pretty fortunate in in the trip. We were based out of TK, so it was. I'll say it was relatively cushy in that sense, the threats present, but we were doing day-to-day tasking. So we would go out essentially every day, drive out to different AOs, do different things. But our job was essentially to take other government agencies around the AO. The nickname at one point was, this was inherited, Blacktop Warriors. Essentially the roads had been made mostly bitumen, which meant it was relatively safe to get around anywhere immediately close to TK, but as you went further out, I guess the trip itself was awesome. It was set up to be, I can't say underwhelming, because a lot happened that, we were based on my experience and what was happening to us, not the entire the trip overall. A big highlight was there was a complex attack in TK. So I think we'd been there for maybe 1 or 2 months. I remember going out on our first outside the wire experience with the handover. We're driving around TK, which at that point in time was very safe. And I was essentially thinking that every bump we were going to get blown up. And the guy who was doing the handover was sitting there, and he was just casual, not stressed, not worried about anything, but that didn't reassure me at all, because unfamiliar ground. 6 weeks later, sitting down at the airfield, and I'm sitting on the rear gun. It was a base tasking, so we were actually just going to be picking up some American officials, taking them around the base. We weren't going off. I think it was a Sunday by memory. It was a R&R day or low tempo day, and I could hear this chatter coming through the radio because we were working with the Americans, and it just sounded crazy. I just kept thinking, wow, this is wild. I cannot understand what is happening. This must be something like
Don't they know it's our day off?
Well,
Fucking hell.
Even Jesus rests on a Sunday.
we were just getting this. Yeah, it was just essentially it was just coming through, and I just kept thinking, oh, this is so weird, man. This is like what they're saying sounds like what I'd imagine they'd be saying in helmet or something like that. You know, it was just intense. There was
Yep.
lots of yelling. You know, I think at one point in time even said it's a house-born IED, and I was like, what's going on? And then I look over to my right, and there's this big mushroom cloud, and I'm like,
Fuck.
I remember popping down my head into the vehicle and saying to my secco, hey mate, are there any controlled DEMs? Oh, can't hear anything, there's nothing that comms. I'm like, yeah, right. I'm watching this Apache flying down, flying around, flying down, and after watching it for some time, I realized, oh, this is one of these people talking is actually the Apache. I'm like, right.
Yeah. Getting stuck
wild.
in.
Then there's another mushroom cloud. I'm like, mate, as soon as I poke my head in, go. We became the QRF.
Yep.
So yes, it was a complex attack. There were several vehicle-borne IEDs. One detonated at the governor's compound. One detonated at the radio station. So it blew through the walls, and then several suicide bombers ran in.
So they gave it a good slap.
Yeah, they ran in, held up in the buildings, and essentially waited for the first responders to come or the coalition forces to come in, and then they were detonating as they were coming in. So we went out as a QRF. It was just, you know, like, it was interesting, it was exciting.
Treating the
but
threat,
at
yep.
the same time, you know, we are a safe force compared to, you know, I was watching and I could see firsthand, you know, American tactics versus Australian tactics, and how we are force preservation. You know, we would stop, we would find out where the contact was coming from, move forward slowly. You know, where essentially they were running in as a single file through this hole in the wall.
Bias for action.
Yeah. So, you know, it was just, it was very different. It was very, it was interesting, and it set this kind of tone. This is what the trip is going to be.
It's reality.
Like, you know,
Yeah.
This is the beginning of the trip, and this is what it's going to be like. And very few things compared to that from that point on. And, you know, we were relatively safe throughout that time because we did have protective devices. We had all the things which were keeping us safe. There were a couple of IEDs, vehicle-borne IEDs, that were placed on that route in, but essentially we were kept safe by devices on the vehicles, devices that we carry. So that was great.
Did you find, mate, as you went, sort of as the time progressed through your trip, did you find that you were closer to old mate in terms of your levels of comfort? Or did that kind of throw you off a little bit from the start where you're like, okay, fuck, this can happen at any point in time? Like, where'd you sit?
I don't know. Yeah, I couldn't really piece together exactly how I felt about that. I remember sitting there thinking, wow, this is it. This is what you kind of imagine.
It's what happens in a war zone.
We're not at Moorbank anymore, Toto.
Unpredictability.
Chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fog of war.
Ultimately, the complete, like, over time, you know, from that point on, you know, I look back at pictures of us only a week before in the governor's compound. And you know, it was considered to be
a safe place.
Yeah. You know, they had the AMP on the walls, so, you know, they were essentially the first line of defense. You know, we would go in, we would have a walking patrol, have a couple of pickets around for different things or different areas, but essentially it was considered to be a pretty safe space. It happened on that day. The governor was not home, so that was a tick. We weren't there, and so, you know, for all of the effort they put into the strategy of this complex attack, there were a couple of major shortfalls that there was no one really there. So it was a lot of hype with little return.
Not enough outcome, not much outcome.
Crazy times. What were some of the highlights that you had on the trip, though? Like, what did you?
Yeah, look, I'd say that was a highlight. It was a highlight. Significant experience. It was great to go out and work as a team. Overall, it was just a really cool experience to get to see what you watch on television. I remember when I was joining, people would say, "Yeah, but what if you have to go overseas?" It's like, yeah, I'm kind of banking on that.
Yeah,
it's kind of one of the reasons I'm joining. I'm not joining under this pretense that I'm not going to get to go over. I'm joining under the pretense that I expect to go over, and then that would essentially close the loop on I've done what I have trained to do.
Yeah, it's a very difficult thing for civilians without context to be able to understand it, and it's not, it's certainly not warmongering. It's certainly not, in fact, most of the people that I know in the Defence Force, they sort of not against war, but they're kind of very cautiously, careful about leading into war. But when we're in a place where it's about defence of your nation and it's about sort of, putting your money where your mouth is, going over and serving your country, it's what most people want to do in the Defence Force. Again, not out of being gun-ho and not out of being sort of, we want to go over there and do, nasty stuff. It's all about, this is what I've trained for. And what I used to try and relate it to is, to my civilian friends is imagine being a teacher and imagine going to university and then going and getting a master's degree to be the best, economics teacher, that you can be, and then never stepping foot into a classroom.
Yeah. Yeah, well, look, ultimately that's exactly it. I didn't want to go over there to get some. I didn't want to
of course.
There was no kind of
bravado
expectation that anything would happen. It was just to do that, and then to contextualize that. I'm not going to get into that political side, but watching things like the Ukraine-Russia conflict, watching any type of ongoing conflict at the moment, for me, I really see that as it's not the political standpoints and things, it's the lives involved, and
of course
a lot of the people on either sides are essentially just doing their jobs.
But that's the sad thing about conflict, mate, is it is a politician's decision, and we're apolitical here at Axon. We don't sit on any side of the fence in regards to anything, anything political, that is.
Just being a GC.
And take care of people, but it is always the case, mate. It's the decisions of politicians that have made at the senior levels that the people on the ground have the role responsibility to go out and execute against those decisions, and then that's what we sign up for. Signed up for, not anymore.
What about Aaron? Was there any low points over there? Was there anything that happened that you could turn back time and go, I wish that didn't occur?
Look, if you could turn back time, it would be one. They weren't in. Wasn't in our section, it wasn't in our platoons, but it was in that battle group. The Villa Green and Blues. It was not that. Obviously, that they would be the spaces I would go back and I would change. But I know that I can't, and I know that no one can. So I guess radically accepting that and kind of learning. Well, for me, I can't really learn from that, but I can take a lot out of it. That's the value of life. And I guess the way that can just take away. I would say the lowest points, things I learnt over there were the value of human life. That was something I struggled with afterwards, was how a lot of the time you say you cannot put a value on human life. Yes, there's insurance, there's this, but there were incidents of things happening to animals, civilians, and essentially you could quantify to $1 amount how much that human's life was worth in reparations to the family.
Yep.
And that's a hard thing to sit with, because if that was any other country, those reparations would be nothing. I think it would be an insult, but ultimately that's how it works there, and that's kind of what you just have to work with.
Isn't it not funny? Funny's certainly not the right turn of phrase. Isn't it
unusual?
Unusual, insightful at the sliding scale of human life throughout different areas in the world. Did you, like you've mentioned it, but was it something that really slapped you in the face, mate, when you got there, that it was, the value that we put on in the Western world, the value we put on human life was remarkably different in that space? Was that something that became immediately apparent to you, or did it take some time?
Look, I'd say it took some time. You watch a movie, it's very disconnected. Watch a movie of a third world country, watch movies of third world countries, and they're not in conflict, and they're just famine. And you can see that the value of life in this country is just significantly lower than what you would see in the Western world.
Yeah.
Because we're in the Western world watching these ads.
Yeah, absolutely.
It all happen, and we're going, well, it's not us. So
it's
not as bad as it could be.
It's certainly something I can relate to in Timor. Well, I spent 5 years over in Timor, mate, and just that was something that was starkly different to me that I had to sort of not grapple with, because it wasn't something that was slapping me in the face. It wasn't a war zone, but when we saw things like COVID and the like coming down the pipe, and where we thought it was going to be Ebola and was going to wipe out half of the world's population. We were seeing a lot of the senior Timorese officials kind of not fobbing it off, but going, mate, we're worried about fucking malaria. We're worried about starvation. We're worried about all this other stuff. Don't worry about your fucking COVID. But as we were rolling through on a day-to-day basis, we would see, little things like a car accident in the road where somebody would be killed, and people would just be filming it and throwing it up on Facebook like it was, no big deal. People being eaten by crocodiles, throwing it up on Facebook like it was no big deal. There was a disparity between the value that they put on human life and the way that they approach that. And I put that down to, 25 years of being occupied in a conflict where human life became, the care for human life became a flippant consideration, on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
It's a sliding scale everywhere, though.
It is, mate.
Yeah. What was it like when you first got home?
Yeah.
And how were you able to reintegrate back into your life, back into your family, back into your partner, whatever that looked like?
Yeah, so look, I think coming back, we didn't know return date when we got there. Essentially, it was just that wait out until you find out. We did went to Europe for my 10-day leave.
Yeah, good.
Essentially got back, and I think 1 week after that, we got told that we would be coming back to Australia January. It was like January 26th or 23rd or something like that. So I was like, okay, great. Wow, that was cool. I've just come back from my leave, and 2.5 months from now I'll be back in Australia.
Start the little countdown clock, the little deployment countdown clock that you've got, mate.
yeah, and that was like it did put this surreal moment into my head of
This has an end date.
Yeah, and I've been safe till this point. Now I just need to stay safe until
the end.
So ultimately, I was counting down. I was preparing. I was setting up what my life would be like once I get back. How this experience essentially is going to shape who I am and define who I am. And now I have insight that essentially most of the world aren't going to be able to have. Came back. We had decompression.
Yep.
So 3-day decompression, and then we could go on to our leave. And look, that was probably the first little, red flag moment. Maybe not red flags. Red flags probably not the right word. It's more just kind of me going, I don't like this. There was a bit of you got to do your 2 psych assessments to clear yourself. People had grievances that they wanted to kind of air before they went away onto their holidays. And there were a couple of instances of people expressing how they felt, kind of being pushed back a bit, which would then ultimately encourage them to lash out a bit more, because that's not something that sat with them well either.
So, Aaron, was it this? What you referred to it as this was the thing that you didn't like? This being the bureaucratic process that you had to jump through, like or was it the actual physical going through that process? So, was it the concept that you had to do it, or was it doing it itself?
No, I think, to be honest, doing it itself, I think is a requirement, hands down. That makes complete sense. Coming back from a very different area, like we went to Abu Dhabi, we had half a day. We went out to the shopping centre, and a balloon popped in the shopping food court, and we were halfway under the table.
Yeah, that's not normal.
That was, that was just because it's not like that was happening routinely. We had the indirect fire coming in.
Yeah,
it was more just that was the immediate action drill.
Okay,
get under cover. Do this. Get low. So getting back doing that decompression makes complete sense. It's more just the responses to some of those.
Got it.
You've got people coming back, high stress, high strung, pretty concentrated opinions. Ultimately, as a result of expressing those, being put into observation for an additional week or 2 weeks, and losing their leave. Being put into the base, and it kind of created this culture of, well, not culture, created a
behaviour of not expressing.
The big neck spreads pretty quick. It's don't do this.
Don't punch your CO in the face, and don't do that through your pops.
If you want to go on leave, just say what needs to be said.
Yeah.
Comes back at another point. And pick these things up when you've had your holiday.
Yeah.
And it's just those were the types of things that I don't like. I didn't like that didn't sit well, because ultimately you want to be able to express yourself without negative.
Sure. Or even a perceived negative consequence of, of that discussion.
Having a healthy AAR process is not easy.
Yeah, it's fucking tough.
Because the 360 feedback loop that needs to occur from a sustained, fix and improve perspective does mean that there's going to be some comments made about you more than likely that you could have improved.
Yeah.
And when you're in a sense of heightened sort of awareness, excitement there, that's not easy to take. That's what I mean, just having a healthy AAR mindset. And if you haven't done a AAR process before, doing it when you first get back from a war zone for the first time is going to be even more difficult. So it's almost like the AAR process and the professionalism of the AAR needs to be put in place before you even get there.
Yeah.
Like when you're doing your mission rehearsal exercise, right, let's AAR the shit out of ourselves.
Yeah.
Because guess what? We're going to do this when we get back. And this is all hindsight stuff, of course, but you're absolutely right. It's very, very difficult to do. But we do AARs here all the time. Every quarter. You get it every day
Robbie
from me.
provides me feedback every single day, mate, without fail, I promise you.
And a lot of it's fucking good. But some of it I'm like, hey, bro, I reckon we can do better here.
No, I reckon you can do better. No, I'm kidding. Mate, talk to us now. So you started to settle back in. Oh, shit, I just kicked the camera. You started to settle back in, mate. What did that look like for you? So you've done that. You kind of tucked that to bed. What did that look like for you, mate?
Look, so I was, come back, just trying to articulate it as quickest and most effective way possible, because I do this. Essentially, we came back and I was so sure about who I was, where I wanted to be, where I was going to go, how I was going to get there.
That's good.
I wanted a black Jeep Wrangler. That was my visualization. I'm going to get this, and this is how I know I've succeeded. I wanted to have strong principles, morals, and ethics. I wanted to essentially have a rule book that guided me on what I should and shouldn't do. So essentially, it had just reinforced. This is something I can look at in hindsight, but it's black and white thinking. I had really just gone, wow, I can definitively say that things are black and white. With my rule book, I would be able to get through life.
I've nailed it.
Exactly. Yeah. This is good. This is not good. In this situation, this is how I respond consistently. In this situation, this is how I respond consistently.
Because life's really simple when you're away.
I was about to say.
But as we know, life is not simple back here.
Yeah.
How long did that last?
Yeah.
Look, this is the thing, and look, so I guess ultimately this is what had led to a part of my demise. But ultimately, I got back and I had this idea, and I knew what I wanted to do, which I wanted to be a PTI, or I wanted to be a personal trainer.
How good are your calves, mate? That's a qualification.
They've been better. But, I knew that I liked health and fitness, and I knew that's where I wanted to go in the long term. If I was going to stay in the army, I wanted to be a PTI.
Yep.
I could see that. I needed things to get to that point. And as soon as I got a sense that the carrot was being dangled, it kind of was, this is not great. I don't really like this, because I've worked to this point, and so ultimately I had this side plan, which was I will do it externally as well, which was become a PT.
Yep.
Ultimately, I became a PT. There was me leaving the Defence Force. I won't go into the details. Everyone's got their whole rationale behind, but I'll just put it down to I was young, I was proud, and I would say that in the situation there was probably just essentially it was just I don't want to go into the specifics, because there's nothing wrong with
That's
it.
right.
It's just I don't really want to drag anyone else through anything.
That's all right, mate.
Just,
I can tell you still keep yourself in pretty good nick, mate. There's some PSI in the buttons across your chest there.
I'm just trying to dissect, just so we're clear. Did you try to go to PTI stream, but that wasn't successful? So you're like, fuck it, I'm getting out and I'll be my own PT.
Yeah, ultimately it
okay.
It wasn't even down to that. It was look, we're just nipping the bud. Essentially, I had a recommendation from ROC that this is how this should pan out. But then I was asked to give my word that I would stay in the Defence Force if I were to get this course. I was very proud at that point in time, driven by principles and morals, and I'd ultimately said, well, I don't, with all due respect, sir, I don't believe I need to give my word if I have earned some merit. And, you know, that was just a simple conversation where I was too young and too proud. But then also, you know, you've got a young commissioned officer who is also
Young and proud.
young and proud. And
Yeah.
he's doing what he's been told to do. He's just
Yeah.
come out of RMC. He's essentially saying, well, you know, I need to be a leader and I need my soldiers to X.
Yep.
No. I fucking taught leadership down at Duntroon,
That wasn't
and
it.
the last thing I do not fucking
wasn't it.
remember there being a tick box on someone's PAR that says you now give your word to do shit.
Nah.
That's the dumbest fucking thing I've
Yeah.
ever heard in my life,
Yeah.
quite frankly. And if old mate fucking your boss is listening to that, I hope he's now reflecting. He or she's now reflecting on, I shouldn't have fucking asked this guy to give his word.
Oh.
This is not the fucking church.
Yeah.
And like I said, unless the fucking leadership manual's changed. This doesn't exist.
I was a young officer, mate, and I was a young proud officer. I can assure you, I probably
Trained by the best.
He was my leadership instructor at Duntroon, mate. So I can assure you, mate, I probably made some of those dumb decisions or had some expectations that were outside of what it should have been, not realising the consequence that I could perhaps have on somebody's life just by making a poor decision. Now, obviously, I tried to minimise that by not being a fucking idiot. And I'm not saying this guy is, but it's really profound of how much of an impact you can have on somebody's life just by making a decision that perhaps isn't a requirement, placing your own requirements over the top of something.
Or if you're a young officer listening right now and you've got it in your repertoire to go to one of your bloody subordinates who wants to do something to improve their life,
Encourage them.
Don't ask them to fucking give you your word.
But don't be a cock. Encourage them and do everything you can to make sure that you are supporting them.
Why don't you treat them nicely and support them and show them that you care, and then they'll stay. How about that for a fucking concept?
Fuck, that's...
Look, I think ultimately that was the big takeaway. On reflection, I can.
I'm so glad we're having this conversation. Keep going, Aaron. No, it's good. No, it is good to, because there'll be someone listening out there going, yeah, he's absolutely right. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Because you're living proof of it, mate. Because how's the thing? If you had been able to successfully transition to PDIs, the likelihood of you perhaps still being in is there, right?
Yeah, look, you could ask any of the dudes I served with, and they would have said, "Oh, Aaron, he's a lifer." Right, like, that was the thing, and you know, it was like the canary, the bird, birds in the vine. Like, oh, Aaron's out. Well, mate,
What?
Yeah, what the fuck happened there? Yeah.
Everybody got back from overseas. There was a mass exodus, but that happens.
Yeah,
sure.
But ultimately, I can look back in hindsight and I can go, well, look, the only people that lost in this situation were me and the defence force. You know, the young officer, that was just one of a handful of people that were left. So there would have been no reprimands. You know, I did get to speak to the CO before I marched out, and all I could flag is that this could have gone another way, but ultimately that's just another part of an AAR process. But, you know, to me, I lost a career. Could have been a lifer. But then also...
you gained a lot too, mate.
Yeah.
You gained a lot.
Yeah. I read in your bio that you're actually really happy in hindsight, as am I. I had a very sudden and tumultuous exit as well. Best thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah.
By far.
Yeah. Let's talk about that now, mate. Let's jump into your transition. What was it? What was the lead up to that like quickly? And then how did you feel on your last day? Was it like, fuck, I am no longer in the Defence Force. I am now a veteran, not a civilian. Not a civilian. I am now a veteran, you know, from my service. How did that make you feel?
Yes. So, So essentially had the conversation. I left the office, wrote my discharge for the nominations date for the prerequisite course. Noms date came out, had it pre-dated for that date. Not the course, because I said, with all due respect, I'll only go
fuck yourself.
If I get it by merit. Yep. So handed that in and started the process. You know, it's a 6-month process. I had my PT qualification. I was made an offer for a job, so I started the process of actually transitioning, and I tried to make that as least painful as possible.
Of course.
Now, essentially, it was painful to some extent because, you know, I'm in Townsville, I'm relocating to Brisbane, break lease, finding a house down here that I can't inspect. There was a whole heap of things which were just making it difficult. I had a partner at the time. You know, there were all these different bits and pieces which I was trying to put together. The big one was once everything came together, so I got offered a job, so I could expedite the process. I was out 3 months. Now, I will say that that's probably one of those red flag moments. You know, just come back from a deployment. made a decision, and they've expedited my separation from defence. You know, I'm out essentially within 5 months of returning from Afghanistan.
Yeah, that's a
So, you know,
fuck.
yeah. So
That's
it
quick,
was a
mate.
pretty big one. So I got out. I remember going onto the base on my last day, so I wasn't working. I went in to drop something off, or to get some pictures or something. Said, see you to the boys. You know, they all came out. You see you, mate, but you know, it's just another person leaving the unit.
Yep.
So they all say goodbye, drive off the base,
That's it.
and that was well, that's probably the thing I say to everyone. I did not realise that when I drove off that base that day and looked in the rearview mirror.
Yep.
And realised quite quickly that wow, that wasn't this spectacular thing that I was imagining it would be with like fireworks and hoses and things. It was really just, I'm just a guy driving off the base. I didn't go back for 10 years.
Yep.
I didn't go back to Townsville for 10 years. I didn't go back to the base for 10 years.
Guess what? There's someone that's driving off a base today
Yep.
doing exactly this.
Exactly
I
the
fucking
same
guarantee
thing.
you that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you still remember it happening to you. I sure as shit remembering happening to me as well.
Yeah, man.
It's a really crazy part of one's life. So, you know, what's the lesson learned out of here?
You need to
Don't expect big things when you leave. Sure, try and get a bit of a send off, a bit of a farewell. You know, if you're in the sergeant's mess or the officer's mess, you should leave with some sort of plaque or something. And someone stands up and says a couple of nice words about you, if you're lucky. But yeah,
I think
the machine goes on.
exactly. I think unapologetically, the way in which the Defence Force is structured is that it needs to go on, right? You think about it in the worst case scenario. You know, people fall over, they take a dirt nap overseas. The organisation needs an ability to be able to push through that. And unfortunately, that kind of behaviour is inherent in peacetime play that we do over here as well, where if somebody steps out, there needs an ability to step in. That doesn't fucking mean that you shouldn't give people the send-off they deserve. You shouldn't support them through their transition, and you shouldn't allow them the best opportunity to, flourish on the other side, whatever that looks like for the individual. And I was very fortunate to be able to receive that from my CO.
Yeah, the best case scenario is that when they're having a family day, you're invited and you go back there, not 10 years later.
Yeah.
Well, look, I didn't realise that it would be the last time I saw 80% of my colleagues, my mates.
Yep.
That was probably one of those surreal ones. You just kind of expect that one day you'll catch up, but ultimately without that shared thing,
Yep. Life goes on.
Yeah, the handful which I have kept in contact, and sure, I'm Facebook friends with most of the guys, and we touch base was in the area, but at the same time, there's a big chunk of people who were in my life for a significant amount of time who I haven't seen for 15 plus years.
Yeah.
It's a huge separation.
It's massive.
It's
Particularly when you're in a case, you're onboarded somewhere between 6 months of education training, culture, realignment to fit the organisation.
waiting on the dead grass.
Waiting on the dead grass, standing by, getting yelled at, get on the piss, don't get on the piss. What the fuck am I doing?
Don't get caught, but
Don't
have a
get
crack
caught.
if you want.
It can be 6 months up to 4 years in some trades organisations, across the military. When you are in a combat environment or overseas in any capacity, and you come back and 5 months later you are fucking looking at that organisation in the rearview mirror, that is a huge sense. It can be a huge sense of loss. It can also be a huge sense of relief depending on the individual. But a huge sense of loss that you lose your identity, you lose your culture, you lose your mates. You lose the thing you've known, your sense of purpose, all of those things. And this is what I just wanted to transition into now, Aaron, is where it started to get bumpy for you, mate, after you sort of, wave goodbye in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. So look, I got to Brizzy, started my PT business. I had a pretty dead set way I was going to do it. I knew this is what I was going to do. And I did the things which I believed I needed to do in order to get that going. I worked really, really hard. I worked 7 days a week. Now, when I say work 7 days a week, doesn't ultimately mean I was getting paid this. You're working on the business. So ultimately,
I know all about it.
Yeah.
As a business owner, it becomes who you are.
Yeah.
It becomes your life. And if you don't let it become your life, you will fail because you're not giving it enough attention.
That's it. And but I also remember saying to myself, I got to my house and I'd be sitting there and I was like, okay, great. So I'm ex-army. I wasn't throwing around veteran at that point. This wasn't the term which I was using. I was using ex-army.
Yeah.
At what point do I have to stop saying I'm ex-army? At what point? Because there must be an expiry on when I can do this. Well, it'll be 1 year. 1 year from the day that I leave defence. That's the day that's an arbitrary thing I said.
You're very black and white, aren't you, mate?
Yeah, one day from this day, I will be a civilian and I can no longer say I'm ex-army, and essentially that part of my life disappears. And then I pushed that back and went, okay, well, my actual separation date is the end of my leave. Cool. This is the day. So I had 1 year of essentially knowing who I was until the day came around when I was no longer in the army. And that was a confronting day because it was, crap, I am just a civilian. I'm Aaron. So now everything that defines me is what I do. If I'm not doing what I'm doing well, then there's not a lot going on. And so that went on. I ended up so I met my now wife. I was working at a gym as a PT, so I moved away from soul trading just externally, and I was working at the gym. And I put my hat in the ring to start studying. And I was made an offer. So I can go back into this in a bit more detail, but I was made an offer. And I started managing a gym because it gave me some stability. So full-time income. I knew when I needed to be where I needed to be. I had a very busy, I guess, life. Now, throughout this period, there were small red flags popping up. But one of the big things which I was starting to realize at this point was things aren't black and white. For years, I'd managed to pull this off for years. And one of the things I used to do was I would try to write this handbook of things I can and can't do. What is my guiding philosophy behind everything, essentially, which would be black and white. I didn't realize at that point in time, but that's what I was trying to construct. As time went by and I was working in this gym, and I'd come and study, got me into critical thinking, reflective thinking. I'd be sitting there in my office, 4 walls. I'd watch people walk in and walk out. See, I'm having an impact on their life. I'm helping them get healthy. I'm helping them get fit. A year went by. I was like, man, wow, I'm just in this. It's like a prison. It's like 4 walls. It's like a prison. I'm trapped here. And am I really having an impact? I used to be in the army. Man, I used to be in the army.
Yeah.
I used to do this. I used to do that. I'm not that anymore. I can't even say that anymore. I'd see ex-defense guys, or I'd see ex-defense come through, and I'd lavish a conversation with them. Oh, hey, mate. Oh, yeah. You're in the army. Oh, mate, I used to be in the army, and they'd love to.
That
Awesome.
shared experience.
That's good.
Yeah, that's great, mate.
Yeah, they'd say, oh, yeah, oh, mate, I've got a pack. Do you want to buy a pack? Yeah, I'll buy your pack. Yes, got my pack. You go. I remember saying to one guy, I'm like, here's my pack. He's like, oh, yeah, I'll give you $50. I'm like, yeah, righto, mate. You can go back to uni. You can tell all these guys. You can tell all your mates that this pack's seen more like it's been in the army longer than you've been in the army. You just shortchanged me another $100. But it was about helping each other.
Yeah, of course, mate.
So that went through. But yes, then I started to find myself going down this political rabbit hole. Just looking for things. I was looking for definitive things. I was essentially trying to find out what are definitive ways that I can justify my life. My son was born 2017, and that was the catalyst that really began. When I say the catalyst, it was the best thing that's happened to me, but also it was the tipping point of that experience. It shook my world because
they do that.
I needed to develop systems leading up to it, which was highlighting how, delicate everything was. And then he was born, which really highlighted that now I am the protector, and now I am responsible for this life, and now the threats in the world are real, and it's not just me, it's me, my wife, and my son.
Yeah.
And that I actually play a significant role in who he will be in the future, and what if I mess that up? And so this kind of started this cascade of events where the black and white
Facade doesn't work.
And I realized that there were so many grades that I was struggling to place into these categories, that I was essentially trying to force them into these categories, and they just don't fit. And they would create incongruencies, and I'd just be sitting there going, but it's not.
What was your coping mechanism that you started to develop, mate? Because most of us, as we've all identified, you're in that level of stoicism, whether it's toxic or not, just obviously stoicism has its place, but over the long term, as a solely stoic approach to life can result in some pretty unhealthy behaviours. What did you develop unhealthy behaviours? And if so, what were they? Or what were the healthy behaviours you developed?
Look, I'd say that so fitness was my defining. That was my defining point outside of defence. Was defence set me up, it gave me the skills. It made me appreciate health and fitness, and I always was proud of that fact. And so post service, I tried to be really fit, really healthy. I tried to be really successful. I tried to apply those mindsets and skills. My back went shortly after I got out, and so I would have flare-ups over time, and when those would happen, that was always they were the toughest parts, because when that happened, then I would lose this one thing, essentially defining the outside of the fence as a result of service. And the Stoic mentality was putting aside these ideas of, I should talk to someone. There were intermittent points where I reached out. I reached out to counselling services, and I did go in once. And it's kind of, I can't say I wasn't turned away. It was probably just
Underwhelmed.
Someone's essentially, it's probably just this. Don't worry about it. When in retrospect, that probably would have been the best time to intervene, because
Prehab's better than rehab.
Yeah, 2 years after that.
That's a fucking cracking saying.
Yep.
That was it. 2 years after that, I was in a psychiatric hospital for a short stay. So, my son was born. About 6 months from that point, I was studying full time at that stage, working casually. I'd set up that I could essentially push my degree out a year and a half if I did it this way. But it meant we had to be really fine with our budgets. Things were down to the dollar. And then, it was trying to get, once things started to go off the rails, one day I just, there were a couple of red flags. One day I just woke up and I just couldn't. Tears.
Right.
I just could not. And I thought that was rock bottom. But essentially, making the phone call, going and talking to someone, the subsequent 2 days, I fell from cliff to cliff, to eventually, I was literally at the bottom. I felt like I was getting dragged along the ground.
I can relate to that, mate.
And there.
Aaron, I know I can relate to that very, very strongly, mate. And I know that, after I shared my story on here, I got a lot of people reaching out from all walks of life, whether that be from high school, through to serving members and peers that I have now, reaching out and just thanking me for sharing how I went through that experience, mate. Where did that take you from there? So, rock bottom, a lot of veterans unfortunately will hit that space, but it's not the fucking end state. It's not where we end up.
This is the new start point.
The new start point, exactly.
On the way up.
Yep. There's only one way to go from there, and it's fucking up. Let's jump in, spend the last 5 to 10 minutes, mate, on rolling. What got you out of that? Obviously it's still bumpy along the way, but where are you now?
Because you're in a really good spot now.
Yes.
So, take us on that, ascend us.
Yeah, look, I'll try and fly through it. So, essentially that happened. Short stint to hospital, got some diagnosis, which meant I could start treatment.
Yep.
Got out of the hospital, took a semester off study, went back to study. Things were starting to go upwards. It was an uphill battle. There was a lot of things that were happening. It changed the dynamics of my relationship. It changed who I was as a person fundamentally, because it was really hard to kind of get around these things. I was taking different medications, put on, I think, 40 kilos.
Yep.
Wow.
Fitness was not the epitome of fitness. Got to the end of 2019. I was finishing the degree. Beginning of 2019, things were looking pretty good. Middle of 2019, I had a very, very unique placement opportunity, and I think you'll appreciate this. So one of the placement opportunities through my undergraduate was the Bachelor of Exercise Sports Science, was to go to Timor-Leste, and we went out to Pacao. We went around to all the schools in the province, and we delivered health and education packages to the schools to teach the teachers how they can incorporate PT into their daily classes.
Nice.
Now, that was, we did that for 10 days. That was, I think, it was a couple of hundred schools. That was probably the most significant experience since deploying, my son being born, and it gave me closure to a lot of things. It didn't fix everything, but it gave me a lot of closure, because essentially the big thing from the trip was we were OGA, we were the protective force, security forces for these
Yep.
uni graduates at the teeth around the AO. Our life was ultimately more expectable than theirs. We got paid less, they got paid more. There were a lot of things which I was struggling with, and I struggled with that for a long period of time. Go to Timor, we were the uni graduates. We weren't graduates, but we were essentially that. But we were in a situation where we didn't need the protective forces. And I could see how they could have got so tunnel visioned and not cared about what was happening around them, and how they could be so invested in what it is they're doing, because ultimately they were doing a job. We were allowing them to do that. We were doing a job. We didn't need those support structures. So I came back and, I realized I can find meaning and purpose in other ways. This is the one thing I realized in the gym. I was lacking meaning and purpose. I wasn't working to an ultimate cause.
Love that, man.
Defense was a small cog in a big machine. No matter what I did, how menial, I was always working towards this larger purpose, which I may not know it, but I was. Now, I could see, I could help kids. I could get them, I could help them have fulfilling lives. I wanted to get into research. So I got back, volunteered, became a scout leader, started working with the Kicking Goals Together, which was my good soccer team, tournament that ran on the campus. And then that led into, I graduated, and then I secured the role with veterans programs at ACU. So I was the student veteran support officer. They were kicking off. I was taking over from my predecessor, who's Michael Addis. It's all part of a DBA funded grant. Looked at the need for, was there a need for support for veterans in higher ed? So what would it look like? So they set up the infrastructure. In 2020, I came on as the student veteran support officer. I was doing my Master of Clinical Exercise Physiology to try and get into research. As I went through with that, COVID hit. So it did actually support me, because I could work from home on the veteran programs, developing different things like our veteran transition program, get the infrastructure going, support students, whilst also studying online, because I didn't have to worry about commutes between things, and then go in and do my makeup sessions that we needed to do. At the end of that year, was very fortunate to secure a full-time position as a student veteran support coordinator. And at that stage, I realized I'm not going to be able to do my placements, which were 400 hours the following year, because now I have a full-time job.
Yep.
So I deferred for that year. And as the year went through, I realized again, well, actually, I'm not going to be working in that area. Now I have secured a job at the university in the professional stream, which I didn't know was a possibility. So I was like, great. Well, I may as well do postgraduate in an area that's going to support me in my role. And that's when I started my Master of Business Administration. So I started that. I withdrew from the Master of Clinical Exercise Physiology. I got an exit point, so I got a graduate certificate in clinical exercise rehabilitation. And essentially, from that point on, I went through doing the Master, working in the Veterans Program. Working in the Veterans Program, becoming a Student Veterans Services Manager. And now we've got a whole team. So we've got a staff member up here in Brisbane, a staff member down in Victoria, and a staff member in Townsville at our Leadership Centre. And then we've got several student veterans who are current students who work in a casual role as peer facilitators. So they facilitate engagement amongst their peers. And I finished the Master of Business Admin at the end of last year. So
Congratulations.
Mate, I just love it that there's now a pathway and it's supported and well known about that. I joined as a young digger. I finished year 12, straight into the army. I never thought about going to university. And I'm like, oh, I'm not fucking smart enough to be able to do that. Or I read in your little bio before that it's a perception out there that most veterans are unable to get in the university. And I just love that there is now a formalised program of which you're the manager of to facilitate that.
Yeah,
like we're definitely going to put the link to you and all of your stuff there underneath the sort of podcast description. And it would make me feel bloody amazing that if someone who's listening to this podcast right now and Aaron got to know you really well, like I'm going to reach out to that dude because I feel like I need some higher education or want to further my education. Now that I'm a veteran, like it's a really great space to be in.
It is. Just quickly, mate, we will throw the link in, but what's the best way for people to be able to reach out and contact you guys directly?
Look, the best way to reach us directly would be by jumping on the website, so acu.edu.au. put a / on that, type in veterans, and it would take you straight to the veterans page.
Great.
To engage with us. You can also send an email to student-veteran-services@acu.edu.au. And that will take you to my team. They'll be able to assist with any inquiries. But I guess that the big thing I would say in relation to that is, like you've just said, I didn't do year 12. That's probably the big one.
Yep.
I didn't do year 12. I joined the Defence Force with the idea that university was never on the cards for me. Did a posting in Townsville where the consensus was university students and serving members don't get along. If anything,
Well, they do.
A small segment of each.
it was reinforced by my chain that, you know, you are here because you didn't go to uni. And then when I got out...
Oh, that's interesting.
Fuck.
Yeah,
Is that that same cock?
Yeah.
Is that the same?
You're here because you didn't go to university,
Mate.
and you need to give me your word about something. Yeah, mate.
I went to uni and I'm still a thug. So, mate.
But yes, anyone could. Ultimately,
Yeah.
I would say that I am a person, and you know, I've had good things happen to me. But ultimately, there is nothing significantly special about me, and that if I can do it, I would say a lot of people can. Most people can. University is just a very unique way to get meaningful employment, have purpose, and really to get that idea out of your head that you can't, or
Yep.
my brain. But the one I've heard the most is my brain doesn't work that way. Look, it does not work that way.
If you keep telling yourself that, it won't. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly.
I reckon you're a special person, mate. I think the journey you've been on, your ability to be able to share your story and what you're doing now, like look how wonderfully presented and like
Yeah,
you know, the
man.
dress and bearing of the man now is like impeccable.
Yep.
So the fact you've been on your journey, mate, and I hope you know everyone got something out of that. So Aaron Cornwall, we'll wrap it up there, brother. Thanks so much for sharing your story on Axons Unleashed. Leaky, I feel like you took the lead on that one a fair bit because there's just some elements there to the
Yeah.
story that
Yeah.
I only have connection through Timor with you.
Yeah. Man, I feel like there's a level of connection there, particularly, you know, with you going through those dark places that you had to overcome. You know, most of you out there will have probably heard my podcast, some number 62 or something like that, where I went through something similar, mate. So can I say, you know, from somebody who's walked that path and walks that path every day, man, you should be fucking proud of yourself to be on the other side of that, whatever that looks like for whoever's listening, whatever the other side looks like for you. You know, getting to that other side and not just throwing your hand up as a victim, but saying, I need to have a sense of purpose and I've got an opportunity to be able to help other people. And Aaron, you're doing that, mate. So well done.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Righto, mate. Well done, Luke. Thanks very much. Have a great day, everyone.
Cheers,
See you
everyone.
later.